You know, they say your life can change in a single moment. 1 second, you're just trying to survive another day, and the next, everything you thought you knew gets turned upside down. That's exactly what happened to me on a freezing winter night in Boston. My name is Emma, and I want to tell you about the woman who saved my life and then stole my heart. I still remember that night so clearly. It was December, and Boston was covered in thick, white snow. The kind of cold that cuts through your clothes and settles deep in your bones. Most people were inside their warm homes, safe with their families. But not me. I was walking home after finishing my second job of the day, my thin jacket doing almost nothing against the bitter wind. Let me tell you a bit about myself. I came to America from another country with big dreams and hope in my heart. I wanted to study, to build a better life, to make something of myself. But nobody tells you how hard it really is. Nobody tells you about the lonely nights in a tiny room, or the days when you have to choose between buying food or paying rent. Nobody tells you that sometimes dreams feel more like burdens. That particular day, I had worked from 6 in the morning until 9 at night. First at a small bakery where I made coffee for people who probably spent more on their daily drinks than I spent on food for a week. Then I rushed to my evening job at a bookstore, lifting heavy boxes and organizing shelves until my arms felt like they would fall off. I was so tired. The kind of tired that goes deeper than your muscles, deeper than your bones. It was soul-deep exhaustion. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Just one piece of bread with a little butter. That's all I could afford. My stomach was empty and growling, but I'd learned to ignore it. Hunger was just another uncomfortable feeling in a life full of uncomfortable feelings. I told myself I just needed to get home, get some sleep, and wake up tomorrow to do it all over again. But my body had other plans. I was crossing a quiet street, my feet crunching through the snow, when suddenly the world started spinning. At first, I thought it was just dizziness. Maybe I was more tired than I realized. But then my legs turned weak, like someone had pulled all the strength right out of them. I reached out, trying to grab onto something, anything to steady myself. But there was nothing there. Just cold air and falling snow. The last thing I remember is the ground coming up to meet me. The cold concrete that should have hurt but didn't because everything was already going dark. My last thought was simple and sad. I thought, "I'm sorry, Mom. I tried my best." Then everything went black. I don't know how long I lay there in the snow. Time didn't exist in that darkness. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that someone was watching. Someone who was about to change my entire life. Her name was Dr. Victoria Hayes, but everyone called her Dr. Hayes. She was a legend in Boston. A brilliant surgeon who owned the most expensive private hospital in the city. People said she was a genius, that her hands could work miracles. But they also said other things. They said she was cold. They called her the Ice Queen. They whispered that she had rejected every person who ever tried to get close to her, that she had built walls around her heart so high that nobody could ever climb them. She had just finished working at her hospital. It was late, and she was walking to her car, probably thinking about going home to her luxury apartment.
She almost didn't see me.
She told me later that she thought I was just another drunk person who had passed out in the snow. Boston had plenty of those, especially near the bars. She almost walked away. But something made her stop. Maybe it was the way the streetlight fell across my face. Maybe it was something in her gut, that doctor's instinct that had saved so many lives over the years. Whatever it was, she came closer. And when she knelt down beside me and pressed her fingers against my wrist, checking for a pulse, she realized I wasn't drunk. I was dying. I'm told she acted fast. She picked me up in her arms like I weighed nothing at all, my body thin and light from months of not eating enough. She carried me back into her hospital, shouting orders at nurses who stared in shock. Nobody had ever seen Dr. Victoria Hayes act like this. She was always controlled, always calm, always distant. But that night, carrying a dying stranger in her arms, something in her was different. I didn't know any of this yet, of course. I was unconscious, my body slowly shutting down, my heart barely beating. I was standing at death's door, one foot already through. But Dr. Victoria Hayes pulled me back. She saved my life. And in doing so, she started something neither of us could have predicted. Something that would break down all those walls she'd spent years building. Something called love. I woke up slowly, like swimming up through deep water toward the light. Everything felt heavy and confused. There were sounds around me that I couldn't quite identify.
Beeping.
Soft footsteps. Hushed voices. And there was a smell, clean and sharp. Antiseptic. Hospital. My eyes fluttered open, and I saw a white ceiling above me. This wasn't my tiny room. This wasn't anywhere I recognized. Panic started to rise in my chest.
Where was I?
What happened? Then slowly, like puzzle pieces falling into place, I remembered. The cold. The snow. The feeling of falling. The darkness swallowing me whole. I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The room spun around me and my head throbbed with pain. My whole body felt weak, like I'd been wrung out and left to dry. That's when I saw her for the first time. She was standing near the window, tall and elegant in a white doctor's coat. Her dark hair was pulled back perfectly, not a single strand out of place. Her face looked like it had been carved from marble, all strong lines and sharp angles. Beautiful but cold.
Distant.
When she turned to look at me, I felt pinned in place by her eyes. They were gray, like storm clouds, and they looked right through me.
You fainted, she said.
Her voice was low and controlled, with no emotion in it at all. You're in my hospital. You're lucky I found you. Lucky. The word felt strange. I didn't feel lucky. I felt scared and confused and so tired. Thank you, I whispered. My throat was dry, and the words came out rough. I'm sorry for the trouble. You should be. Her words were harsh. You could have died out there. Do you understand that? You nearly froze to death. I looked down at my hands, shame burning through me.
I didn't want to cry.
Not in front of this intimidating woman. But my chest ached with more than just physical pain. I didn't mean to cause problems, I managed to say. She studied me for a long moment. I felt her gaze like a weight, examining me, analyzing me. Then she spoke again, her voice just slightly softer.
You need to rest.
Someone will bring you your bill in the morning. My heart sank.
Bill.
Of course there would be a bill. This was a private hospital, probably the most expensive in Boston. And I had no money. Not even enough to buy myself a proper meal, let alone pay for emergency medical treatment. When she left the room, her heels clicking sharply on the floor, I lay back and stared at the ceiling. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I was alive, but I had just traded one kind of ending for another. How would I ever pay this debt? Morning came too fast. A nurse brought me a clipboard with numbers on it. When I saw the total, my vision blurred. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life.
More than a year of my rent.
More than all my savings combined, if I'd had any savings at all. I can't pay this, I whispered. The nurse looked sad, like she'd seen this before. You should talk to Dr. Hayes, she said gently. She's the one who brought you in. They took me to Dr. Hayes's office. It was huge, with big windows overlooking the Boston skyline. Everything about it screamed wealth and success. And behind a massive wooden desk sat Dr. Hayes, writing something with careful, precise movements. You're awake, she said without looking up. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for saving me. You should take better care of yourself. She finally looked at me. You nearly froze to death. I held the bill in my shaking hands. Ma'am, about this bill. I paused, gathering courage. I can't pay it. Silence filled the office. She leaned back in her chair, those gray eyes studying me. This is not a charity hospital, she said coldly. My throat tightened. I could beg. I could cry. But something in me refused to lose my dignity. I'm not asking for charity, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. If you let me, I'll work to pay it off. Any job you need. Cleaning, organizing, helping patients. Whatever it takes. I don't like owing anyone. If you saved me, I'll pay you back with my own hands. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Most people probably cried or begged. But I stood there with my head up, offering the only thing I had. My work. My effort.
My pride.
She was quiet for what felt like forever. Her fingers drummed once on her desk. Then she said something that shocked me.
Fine.
You can start today. I couldn't believe it. Really? Don't make me regret it. Her voice was stern, but something in her eyes had softened just a tiny bit. Be ready to work hard. Thank you, I said, bowing my head slightly. Thank you so much. As I turned to leave, I felt her eyes on my back. When I glanced over my shoulder, she was still watching me with an expression I couldn't read. I didn't know it then, but in that moment, something had shifted in Dr. Victoria Hayes's carefully controlled world. Something she didn't understand and couldn't explain. And for me, I had just made a decision that would lead me into a love story I never could have imagined. My first day working at Hayes Medical Center was harder than I expected. I arrived early that morning, my hands still trembling a little as I walked through the fancy glass doors. The lobby alone took my breath away. Everything was polished and expensive-looking. Modern art hung on the walls. The reception desk looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel, not a hospital. This was Dr. Victoria Hayes's empire, and I was about to become the lowest person in it. The whispers started almost immediately. I could feel eyes on me as I walked through the hallways. Nurses stood in small groups, their voices dropping to murmurs when I passed. I caught pieces of their conversations. Who is she? Why is Dr. Hayes letting her work here? She doesn't look like she belongs here. Probably some charity case. Each word stung, but I kept my head down and kept walking. I'd faced judgment before. Being a foreign student in America, being poor in a rich city, being alone in a world that didn't always want me. I'd learned to develop thick skin. But it still hurt. It always hurt. I was assigned to work under the head nurse, a woman named Margaret. She looked at me like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. She was in her 40s, perfectly dressed, with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. So you're the one, she said, looking me up and down with clear dislike. The girl Dr. Hayes found in the snow. Yes, ma'am. I tried to smile. I'm Emma. I'm here to help however I can.
Emma.
She said my name like it tasted bad. Well, Emma, let me make something very clear. This is a prestigious medical center. We have standards here. I don't know what arrangement you have with Dr. Hayes, but don't expect special treatment. I don't expect anything, I said quietly. Just tell me what needs to be done. She gave me a list of tasks that would have exhausted a full-time employee. Cleaning equipment, organizing files, restocking supplies, helping patients with paperwork. All while I was still trying to attend my university classes in the morning and study whenever I could grab a spare moment. It was brutal, but I'd faced brutal before. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. What I didn't know was that throughout that entire first day, she was watching me. Dr. Victoria Hayes moved through her hospital like a queen, confident and untouchable, commanding respect with every step. I saw her from a distance several times, always surrounded by staff or important-looking people, always completely in control. But what I didn't see were the moments when her eyes found me across a crowded hallway. The way her gaze would linger as I carefully cleaned medical instruments or patiently helped an elderly patient fill out forms. She told me later that she couldn't explain it, even to herself. She'd hired countless employees over the years and never given them a second thought. But something about watching me work with quiet dignity, even when people whispered cruel things, made something tighten in her chest in a way she didn't understand. I was different, and Dr. Victoria Hayes didn't know what to do with different. By lunchtime, I was exhausted. I'd been moving nonstop since 6 in the morning. My stomach was growling loud enough that I worried people could hear it, but I'd learned to ignore hunger. It was just another discomfort in a life full of discomforts. I found a quiet corner in a back hallway and pulled out my notebook. I had an exam coming up, and if I could just squeeze in 30 minutes of studying during my break. Taking a break already? I looked up to find Margaret standing over me, her arms crossed. I'm studying, I said, showing her my textbook. I have classes in the evening. How convenient. Her voice was full of sarcasm. Must be nice to treat this place like it's just a side job. Heat rose in my cheeks, but I kept my voice calm. I'm working hard, ma'am. I'm doing everything you asked.
Barely.
She turned to walk away, then paused. You know, people like you don't usually last here. This isn't the kind of place for someone who can't even afford proper work shoes. I looked down at my worn sneakers, the only shoes I owned that were comfortable enough for standing all day. Shame burned through me, hot and painful. But I didn't cry. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. The days blurred together. Classes in the morning, work at the hospital in the afternoon and evening, studying late into the night. I barely slept. I definitely wasn't eating enough. But I was surviving, and survival was all that mattered. The other staff mostly ignored me, except for the occasional whispered comment or cold look. I was the outsider, the charity case, the girl who didn't belong. But I did my work well. I was always on time, always careful, always respectful. And slowly, some of the patients started to recognize me and smile. A few even asked for my help specifically, saying I was patient and kind. Those small moments kept me going. And then there was her. Dr. Victoria Hayes remained a distant figure. Someone I saw but never really talked to. She was always busy with surgeries, meetings with important people, consultations with other doctors. Sometimes I'd see her walking past with a group of business people, her voice calm and authoritative as she discussed complicated medical procedures. She looked like someone who existed in a completely different universe from mine. But sometimes, when I thought no one was looking, I'd watch her. The way she moved with such confidence. The way her hands were gentle when examining patients, even though her voice was cold. The way her eyes, those gray, intense eyes, seemed to see everything and everyone. I told myself I was just curious, that she was simply an interesting person to observe. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. I just wasn't ready to admit the truth yet. Everything changed 3 weeks into my time at the hospital. I was carrying a heavy box of medical supplies down a hallway. My arms were shaking more than usual. I'd skipped breakfast that morning to save money, and I hadn't eaten properly in days. The box slipped. Everything happened in slow motion. I watched in horror as bottles crashed to the floor. Glass shattered. Liquid spilled across the clean floor. The sound echoed through the hallway like an explosion. Everyone stopped and stared. My face burned with shame as I dropped to my knees, trying desperately to clean up the mess. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely pick up the broken pieces. Be careful. Margaret's voice cut through the silence like a knife. She appeared from somewhere, her face twisted with anger. You don't belong here. You'll only make mistakes. This is exactly why people like you. Enough. One word. Just one word. But it cut through the air with the force of a command. Dr. Victoria Hayes stood at the end of the hallway, her expression cold as ice. Everyone froze. Dr. Hayes walked forward, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. When she reached us, her gaze swept across the gathered staff, and I saw several people actually step back. The air felt electric, charged with tension. She's working harder than anyone in this building, Dr. Hayes said. Her voice was low and dangerous. I've watched her. She arrives early. She stays late. She never complains. She treats every task, no matter how small, with care and respect. Her eyes found Margaret, and the head nurse actually went pale. If anyone has a problem with her, Dr. Hayes continued, her voice dropping even lower, they can leave now. I won't tolerate this kind of treatment in my hospital. The silence was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Then Dr. Hayes's gaze dropped to me, still kneeling on the floor among the broken bottles. For just a moment, something flickered in those cold eyes. Something that looked almost like concern. Clean this up, she said, her voice softer now. And be more careful next time. Then she turned and walked away, leaving shocked silence behind her. My hands were still trembling as I finished cleaning, but now it wasn't from shame. It was from something else entirely. She had defended me. Dr. Victoria Hayes, the woman who supposedly cared for nothing and no one, had stood up for me in front of her entire staff.
Why?
That night, Lying in my small bed in my tiny rented room, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way she had appeared like an avenging angel. The way her voice had gone soft when she spoke to me. The way my heart had jumped when our eyes met. I told myself it didn't mean anything. She was just being a fair boss. She would have done the same for anyone. But deep in my heart, in a place I wasn't ready to look at yet, I knew I was lying to myself. After that day, things shifted in the hospital. The whispers didn't stop completely, but they became quieter, more careful. Margaret still didn't like me, but she stopped making open comments. The other staff began to treat me with cautious neutrality, if not friendliness. And Dr. Hayes. I started noticing small things. A cup of coffee would appear on my workstation with no note, no explanation. It was always exactly how I liked it. Simple, with just a touch of cream. When I worked late, organizing files in the records room, I'd sometimes hear her voice in the hallway outside, telling security to make sure the student got home safely. Once, when I was clearly struggling with exhaustion, she appeared in the supply room where I was working and simply said, "Go home. You're no good to anyone if you collapse again." It wasn't kind. It wasn't gentle. But underneath the harsh words, I heard something else. She was worried about me. The realization made my heart beat faster in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. 5 weeks into my time at the hospital, Boston was hit by another snowstorm. I finished my shift late, around 10 in the evening. The hospital was mostly empty except for security and a few night staff. I gather my backpack and prepare myself for the cold walk home. The moment I stepped outside, the wind hit me like a wall. Snow swirled through the air. The temperature had dropped dangerously low. I wrapped my thin jacket tighter and started walking, my head down against the wind. I didn't see the car. It came speeding around the corner, its headlights cutting through the snow. I was crossing the street, my vision blocked by the blizzard, when suddenly there was light and sound and a hand grabbed my arm and yanked me backward. I fell against something solid and warm. Strong arms wrapped around me as the car sped past. So close, I felt the rush of air against my face. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. For a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stand there shaking. Then I realized whose arms were holding me. "Are you trying to die again?" Dr. Hayes' voice was harsh, angry. But her arms hadn't let go of me. If anything, they held me tighter. I looked up at her, and for the first time I saw her face completely unguarded. Her gray eyes were wide. Her face was pale. She looked scared. Scared for me. I whispered. "I didn't see the car." "You never see anything." Her voice was rough, but her hands were gentle as she steadied me. "You work yourself to exhaustion. You walk through blizzards in a jacket that wouldn't keep a child warm. You skip meals. She stopped abruptly, as if realizing she'd said too much. I stared at her, my heart racing for an entirely different reason now. "How do you know I skip meals?" She looked away, her jaw tightening. "I notice things." You notice me?" For a long moment, she didn't answer. The snow fell around us. The street was empty except for the two of us standing there in the cold. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, she said yes. That single word changed everything. I don't know how long we stood there. It could have been seconds or hours. All I knew was that I was looking at Dr. Victoria Hayes, really looking at her, and seeing something I'd never expected. Vulnerability. She let go of me suddenly, taking a step back. But her eyes stayed on my face, and I saw something in them that made my breath catch. "Go home," she said, her voice returning to its usual control. "And for God's sake, be careful." She turned and walked to her car, a sleek black vehicle that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 years. But before she got in, she looked back at me one more time. Our eyes met across the snowy street, and something passed between us. Something unspoken but powerful. Then she drove away, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding and my mind spinning. What was happening to me? And more importantly, what was happening to her? The next morning, I arrived at the hospital to find a package waiting for me at the front desk. "This came for you," the receptionist said, handing me a shopping bag. Inside was a coat. Not just any coat, but a beautiful, high-quality winter coat that looked brand new. It was warm and well-made, in a soft navy blue color. There was no note, no card, no explanation, but I knew who it was from. My hands trembled as I held the coat. This was too much, too expensive, too personal. I should return it. I should march into her office right now and give it back. But even as I thought it, I was putting the coat on. It fit perfectly, like it had been made just for me. And it was so warm, warmer than anything I'd felt in months. I wore it every day after that. And every time I did, I felt like I was wrapped in her care. Her concern, her attention. The whispers in the hospital changed. Did you see her coat? Dr. Hayes gave it to her, I'm sure. Why would she do that? Maybe she's... The speculation was endless. But everyone had an opinion about why the cold, untouchable Dr. Victoria Hayes would give an expensive gift to a poor student. I tried to ignore it all. But it was hard when I caught myself looking for her in every hallway, my heart jumping every time I heard her voice. I was in trouble. Deep, serious trouble. Because somewhere between the snow and the coffee and the coat, between the defense in the hallway and the fear in her eyes when that car almost hit me, I had started to fall for Dr. Victoria Hayes. The woman who rejected everyone. The woman who built walls so high nobody could climb them. The woman who lived in a different world from mine. I was falling for her. And I didn't know how to stop. More importantly, I didn't know if I wanted to. 6 weeks into my time at the hospital, everything came to a head. I was in the break room late one evening, studying for an important exam. Most of the staff had gone home. The hospital was quiet except for the hum of machines and occasional footsteps in distant hallways. I was so focused on my textbook that I didn't hear her approach. You're still here. I jumped, nearly dropping my book. Dr. Hayes stood in the doorway, still in her white coat, looking as perfect and composed as always. Oh, Dr. Hayes. Yes, I have an exam tomorrow. I need to study. She walked into the room, her eyes moving over the scattered papers and books on the table. You work all day, and then you study all night. When do you rest? When I succeed, I said with a small smile. Something flickered across her face. Then, to my absolute shock, she pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. We'd never sat together like this. Never had a real conversation beyond brief exchanges about work. This was different. This was personal. Why are you working so hard? She asked quietly. I looked down at my books. Because I have to. Because I came to this country with dreams, and I won't let anything stop me from achieving them. Not poverty, not exhaustion, not anything. Even if it kills you? Her words were harsh, but her voice was gentle. I looked up and found her watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. I'd rather die trying than live with regret, I said honestly. For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said, You're different. Different how? She looked away, and I saw her jaw tighten, as if she was fighting some internal battle. Different from everyone else. Different from anyone I've ever met. My heart started pounding. There was something in her voice. Something I'd never heard before. Something that sounded almost like, no. I couldn't let myself think that. It was impossible. You should go home, she said abruptly, standing up. It's late. You need rest before your exam. But as she turned to leave, I saw something in her eyes that made my world tilt. She looked at me the way I'd been trying so hard not to look at her. Like I mattered. Like I was more than just an employee or a charity case. Like I was someone she couldn't stop thinking about. After that night, I couldn't deny it anymore. The coffee on my desk every morning. The way her eyes followed me when she thought I wasn't looking. The protective anger when Margaret mocked me. The fear on her face when that car almost hit me. The coat that kept me warm every single day. Dr. Victoria Hayes, the woman who rejected everyone, was paying attention to me. And I was completely, hopelessly falling for her. It terrified me. How could I let myself feel this way about someone so far above me? Someone who lived in penthouse apartments, while I lived in a room barely bigger than a closet. Someone who owned hospitals while I could barely afford my next meal. It was impossible. It was foolish. But my heart didn't care about logic or reason or the vast distance between our worlds. My heart had made its choice. The breaking point came on a cold night, almost 2 months after I'd started working at the hospital. I was finishing up in the records room, organizing files. It was nearly midnight. I should have gone home hours ago, but I'd stayed late to make up for time I'd missed during exams. I didn't hear her approach. One moment, I was alone, and the next she was standing in the doorway. "You're still here." It wasn't a question. I turned, my heart immediately jumping. "Dr. Hayes." I was just finishing up. She walked into the room, and I noticed something different about her tonight. She looked tired. Not physically, but emotionally. Like she'd been fighting a battle with herself, and had finally grown weary of the war. "Emma," she said my name for what felt like the first time. And the sound of it on her lips made my breath catch. "We need to talk." My heart started pounding. Did I do something wrong?
No.
She stepped closer. "That's the problem. You've done everything right." I didn't understand. "Do you know what it's like?" She interrupted, her voice low and intense. "To spend your entire life building walls? To reject every person who tried to get close because you believed love was weakness? To be so sure of yourself and your choices that nothing could shake you?" I could only stare at her, frozen in place. "I thought I had it all figured out," she continued, taking another step closer. "I had my work, my hospital, my success. I didn't need anything else. I didn't want anything else." Another step. We were so close now I could see the different shades of gray in her eyes. "Then I found you dying in the snow," she whispered. And everything I thought I knew about myself started to crumble. "Dr. Hayes." "Victoria." Her voice was almost pleading. "My name is Victoria." The use of her first name felt intimate.
Sacred.
Like she was giving me something precious. "Victoria," I breathed, testing the name on my tongue. She closed her eyes briefly, as if hearing me say it caused her physical pain. When she opened them again, I saw something raw and vulnerable staring back at me.
"For 2 months I've watched you," she said.
"I've seen you work harder than anyone in this building. I've seen you face judgment and cruelty with grace. I've seen you smile even when you're exhausted. Help even when you're hurting. Persevere even when everything is against you." My eyes were burning with unshed tears. "I've tried to ignore it," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I've tried to tell myself it's just curiosity or respect or anything other than what it really is. But I can't lie to myself anymore." She reached out, her hand trembling, and gently touched my face. The contact sent electricity through my entire body. "Emma," she whispered, her thumb brushing across my cheek. "You've broken down every wall I spent years building. You've made me feel things I swore I would never feel. You've shown me that love isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength I've ever known."
Tears spilled down my cheeks.
"I'm falling for you," she said, the words coming out like a confession torn from her soul. "God help me, I'm falling for you, and I don't know how to stop. I don't want to stop." The world seemed to stop spinning. Everything faded away except for her. Her face. Her eyes. Her hand gentle against my skin. "You can't mean that," I whispered, even though every part of me was screaming that she did. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Her other hand came up to cup my face, cradling it like I was something precious. "You walked into my life when I thought I had everything. And you showed me I had nothing. Not really. Not the things that actually matter." "I'm nobody," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm poor. I'm struggling. I'm so far below your world. You're everything." She said it with such fierce conviction that I had no choice but to believe her. "You're brave and kind and strong. You're real in a world full of fakery. You're warm in a life that's been cold for so long I'd forgotten what warmth felt like." She leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. I could feel her breath on my lips, could smell her subtle perfume, could feel the trembling in her hands. "Tell me you feel it too," she whispered. Tell me I'm not alone in this. I closed my eyes, tears streaming freely now. I'd been so scared to admit it, even to myself. But standing here with her, feeling her hands on my face and hearing the vulnerability in her voice, I couldn't hide anymore. I feel it, I whispered back. I've felt it for weeks, maybe since the beginning. I tried to fight it, tried to tell myself it was impossible, but I opened my eyes and looked directly into hers. I'm falling for you too, Victoria. I'm terrified, and it doesn't make sense, and I have no idea how this could ever work, but I'm falling and I can't stop. The smile that spread across her face was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It transformed her, softening all those sharp edges, lighting up those gray eyes. Then don't stop, she said. Don't fight it. Let yourself fall, because I promise you I'll catch you. And then, with infinite gentleness, she pulled me into her arms. I melted against her, burying my face in her shoulder as she held me tight. She was warm and solid and real. And for the first time since I'd arrived in this cold city, I felt truly safe. We stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet records room while the rest of the world fell away. Her hands stroked my hair. I felt her press a soft kiss to the top of my head. I was so lonely, she whispered against my hair. I didn't even realize how lonely I was until you. I pulled back just enough to look up at her. What happens now? Her thumb brushed away my tears. Now we figure out together. I won't lie to you, Emma. It won't be easy. People will talk. There will be challenges. I know. But I don't care. Her voice was firm, decided. Let them talk. Let them judge. I've spent my whole life living for other people's approval. For the first time, I'm going to live for myself. For us. Us, I repeated, the word tasting like hope and possibility. If you'll have me, she said softly. I know I'm not easy. I'm cold and demanding and set in my ways. I don't know how to do this, how to be in love. But I want to try. With you. I stood on my tiptoes and wrapped my arms around her neck. Yes, I whispered. Yes to all of it. Yes to us. She smiled again, that beautiful, rare smile that I was already addicted to. Then she lowered her head and pressed her lips to my forehead in a kiss, so tender it made my heart ache. Come on, she said, pulling back and taking my hand. Let me drive you home. It's late, and you need rest. Okay. As we walked out of the hospital together, her hand warm in mine, I thought about how much my life had changed in just 2 months. I'd come so close to dying in the snow, and instead, I'd found something I never knew I was looking for. Love. Real, terrifying, beautiful love with a woman who had spent her whole life running from it. We stepped out into the cold Boston night, and this time I wasn't alone in the snow. This time, I had her hand in mine and her coat around my shoulders. This time I was home. If you're watching this today, thank you for letting me share my story with you. It's been a year now since that night in the records room. A year since Victoria and I decided to stop fighting what we felt and just let ourselves fall.
And you know what?
It hasn't been easy.
Victoria was right about that. People did talk.
Some of the staff at the hospital still whisper when they think I can't hear. Victoria's family, well, that's a whole other story. Her mother didn't speak to her for 3 months. Her father tried to convince her she was making a mistake. But Victoria stood firm. She held my hand through all of it and never once made me feel like I was a burden or a problem. She introduced me to her family as the woman she loved, and eventually, slowly, they started to come around. Not everyone accepts us, even now. But enough people do. The people who matter do. I finished my degree last month. Victoria was there at my graduation, sitting in the front row with tears in her eyes. She was so proud of me. And when I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, I looked out at her and remembered the girl who almost died in the snow. The girl who thought she had nothing. That girl would never have believed where I am now. I still work at the hospital, but now it's because I want to, not because I have to. Victoria paid off my debt months ago, even though I protested. She said it was a gift, an investment in our future. She's teaching me about medicine, encouraging me to consider medical school, if that's what I want. She believes in me in a way nobody ever has before. And Victoria? She's different too. The staff at the hospital have noticed it. She smiles more now. She's still professional, still brilliant, still commanding. But there's a warmth in her that wasn't there before. She laughs at my jokes. She takes days off to spend time with me. She's learning how to let people in, how to be vulnerable, how to accept love. We moved in together 6 months ago. A beautiful apartment overlooking the harbor. Every morning, I wake up next to her, and I still can't quite believe this is my life. Sometimes she'll wake up first, and I'll open my eyes to find her watching me with this soft expression on her face. And she'll say, "Good morning, my love," and my heart will feel so full I think it might burst. She tells me often now that I saved her just as much as she saved me. That finding me in the snow that night was the best thing that ever happened to her. That I taught her what it means to truly live, not just exist. I never expected this. When I came to America with my small suitcase and big dreams, I never imagined I'd find love. Especially not with someone like Victoria. Someone so far above me in every way that society measures worth. But here's what I've learned. Love doesn't care about money or status or what world you come from. Love doesn't follow the rules we think it should. Love finds you in the most unexpected places, in the most unexpected ways, with the most unexpected people. Mine found me dying in the snow on a cold Boston night. And it came in the form of a woman with walls around her heart and ice in her veins. A woman who everyone said would never fall in love. But she did fall. We both did. And in falling, we found each other. We found home. So if you're watching this and you're struggling, if you feel alone or invisible or like love is something meant for other people, but not for you, please hear me. You are worthy. You're seen. And your love story is out there, waiting for you in ways you can't even imagine yet. Maybe it's not in the snow. Maybe it's in a coffee shop or a library or a random Tuesday afternoon. Maybe it's with someone completely different from you. Or maybe it's with someone just like you. But it's out there. And it will find you when you least expect it. Victoria always says that the best things in life are the ones we don't plan for. The ones that take us completely by surprise and change everything we thought we knew about ourselves. She's right. She usually is, though don't tell her I said that. She'll never let me hear the end of it. Last week, on the anniversary of the night we met, Victoria took me back to the street where she found me. We stood there together in the cold, her arms around me, and she said, "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for fighting to stay alive. Thank you for giving me the chance to love you." I cried.
Of course I cried.
And she held me and kissed my tears away and told me that every day with me is a gift she never thought she'd have. We don't know what the future holds. Nobody does. But we know we'll face it together. Hand in hand. Heart to heart. Two people from different worlds who found each other in the darkness and decided to build a life in the light. That's our story. The story of how the Ice Queen's heart melted. How a dying girl found life. How two lonely souls found each other and decided to stop being lonely. If this story touched you, if it gave you hope or made you believe in unexpected love, then I'm glad I shared it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's given up on love or thinks they're not worthy or believes that fairy tales don't happen to people like them. Because they do. They really do. My name is Emma, and this was our love story. Thank you for listening. Until next time, remember, love always finds a way. Even through the coldest snow. Even through the highest walls. Even when you think it's impossible. Love always finds a way. And when it finds you, don't run from it. Don't fight it. Just open your arms and your heart and let yourself fall. I promise you, it's worth it. It's worth everything.